What's good, everyone? Welcome to Press Turn, a video game podcast. I've let Derek go today, and I have with me Malachi and David. Say hi, guys.
Hello.
Hey there.
And if anyone's watched the previous podcast episodes back when it was Games Under Grace, these guys were like regulars to have on. And it's just that coincidentally, when the change was made over, like Malachi was swamped with work, and um, David just had like a bunch of personal stuff going on too. So just entirely coincidental. I'm not
I've
holding
been
them
in
against their will.
exile. We promise.
Uh, but anyway, yeah, we're just gonna get right into it. Not much to really talk about it except two very interesting topics, and one we're going to be revisiting from quite a while ago. Um, but David, take us through what you've been up to.
I have not been up too much. Um, I haven't even been playing much, aside from the Yuffie DLC for Final Fantasy VII Remake and the Skyward Sword HD remaster. I haven't done much.
Oh, okay. Um, all right.
That's how it is sometimes.
Yeah, that's true.
It's
Um,
that and work, and that's about it.
Fair enough. Malachi, what have you been up to aside from not
Well,
dying in
you and
EMS?
I. Exactly. So before the podcast started recording, Samuel and I had a lively discussion about ADHD. That's a little relevant because my game taste has been very much influenced by my random obsessions recently. Um, so in personal life, mostly just continuing to work as an EMT in the Houston area, and then I'm heading back to university in the fall to get a degree in journalism and Middle Eastern studies with the hope of being a foreign correspondent long term. But in my spare time to de-stress, I've been, let's see, oh boy, I tried out half a dozen different VR games. Again, I will say it's actually one of the nicest things. My apartment is not in an incredible area, and VR actually does a lot for escapism, I would say, to some degree. I tried out Tetris Effect, which is absolutely incredible. It really is kind of just Tetris with music and pretty images, but that it's a lot more than that. It's nice. I like it a lot. Um, and it's pretty impressive for what it is, honestly. The team did a really good job of just making a simple concept really worthwhile in VR. Um, and I think it's one of those VR games that, as I said before, some of the best VR games I've seen so far are ones that don't try to immerse you as much as by moving around, so much as it's just here. You're sitting here, you have a controller, you recognize that you have a controller, just let's do stuff around your head. I think it works really well for a gameplay experience. I'm thinking I did that. I played Creed Rise to Glory in VR as well. That was a lot of fun. I actually used to be a boxer for a decent amount of time, not professionally, but on the amateur level. And it feels remarkably similar. It's like boxing with a small weight strapped to your head, um, just directly onto your face, which is not an experience I recommend, but it was a pretty fun little game. I've been getting back into Dead by Daylight, which I'm not usually into competitive multiplayer. Um, but I played that game for a while and then remembered why I left because it's horribly unbalanced. The economy on endgame points is awful, and most of the fan base is pretty terrible. But it's briefly entertaining. And then a couple days ago, I started Judgment. So I'm working my way through that, and then I'm going to try to start finishing that before Lost Judgment comes out. So a little all over the place, but it's also been a long time since I've been on the podcast. So
Yeah, that's fun. Um, I was curious. What do you think of Judgment so far?
I really like it. So I was actually telling someone the other day, LJ, about or noting the fact that Negoshi's ability, or Negoshi, the lead developer of the Yakuza series, which Judgment is in the universe of, has an incredible ability to create protagonists feel substantially different from one another. I don't think I've seen that many game series, and I know Judgment is a different game series from Yakuza, but I'm vaguely lumping it in together because it's the same universe.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen that many game series that manage to develop protagonists that are like feel different or functionally different, but also all work well from a story perspective in the same series. Like thinking of games that change major protagonists. Trying to think of good examples. Mega Man has Zero. I'm trying to think of. What is one of the games that like tried to change protagonists partway like through the series? Because I think most games stick with one. You know, you get your Link, your Samus, your Mario. Anyway, either way, I've always been impressed by Negoshi's decisions to take things in bold new directions, and Judgment feels right off the bat much grittier, I guess, than aspects of Yakuza, but also in a very different moral kind of moral center, a very like different piece of the same Yakuza series, told through the eyes of someone that's tiny bit more law abiding, but a little bit on the edge at the same time. And the what part that impresses me the most so far is the way that the main character, who's a former lawyer turned detective, plays and explores exactly like you'd expect his character to. You look at him, you see the wiry frame, you see a lot of youthful enthusiasm, you see kind of an impish intelligence in his eyes, and all of that is reflected even all the way down to his moveset. It's really nice, and so I'm excited to play through the rest of the Judgment series, rest of Judgment, and then move on to Lost Judgment. But again, I've played through a decent amount of the Yakuza games. Between Kiryu, Yagami, and Ichiban, all extraordinarily different protagonists set out to tell different stories, but all in substantially the same universe. Just blows my mind, and I'm also excited because Lost Judgment is maintaining the same style of Hannah Streets of Rage style combat that Yakuza is known for, while the main series is taking Yakuza 7's JRPG style. So, I can gush about Yakuza series for a long time, but I'm just always impressed with what they do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's good. I mean, like, I'm not sure if you caught it yet. Well, I'll try not to go too much into detail because there's a lot of discussion we need to get to. But there was recently a news piece about the actor who was who was like I forget what it's called again. Like who's
Motion
like
capture?
yeah, motion captured for his likeness. I forget the actor's name,
Yeah,
but
I mean, yeah.
His company has decided to keep him from participating in future Judgment titles because of
Really, I missed that.
yeah, like basically the way it was described was it was over concerns about about um the digital distribution of his likeness through the game.
Huh.
And it wasn't about money. It wasn't necessarily about copyright, and it wasn't even ripping the assets out because even for a PS4 game that's done pretty easily. So like the reasons are unclear, and it was like it was a thing that's similar to what happened before with actually another actor who was involved with the Yakuza game who was relieved from his acting company because it was found out that he was smoking weed.
Oh.
Yeah. So I mean,
I
like,
would say that's a very Japanese problem to have, and then I remember in America we fire people for the same reasons. So
yeah, that's true. So,
yeah,
yeah, I don't know.
depends on where you live, actually. That's interesting. I hadn't heard about that. if I remember correctly, Yagami's actor is fairly well known. So I can see that being an issue with distribution of his likeness. It'll be a little odd. I don't know. It's Yakuza's kind of odd about that. Like what is it? One of the more fascinating things is there's a character in Yakuza 0, I think, who has two entirely different looks for him depending on which version of that game you buy, because one version intentionally bases him off of a famous Chinese actor. The other version picks a random face that's really horrifying. And there's another character who had a very different outcome, where the original face was horrifying and they redid it in later versions of the game. Their face capture is just kind of odd because Yakuza tends to use it for a lot of the actors, but then it doesn't always turn out well for one reason or another.
Yeah, like oh my goodness, I just said we weren't gonna get into it, but yeah, like but yeah, I don't know. Still, it is kind of odd, and it is kind of a reminder that like this is like another one of those decisions um, where it kind of feels like Sega didn't properly process things or something like that. But I think in the grand scheme of things, it almost makes sense that something like this happened, because it's probably like, oh man, Yakuza's doing great. But we're gonna try something new for for Yakuza 7. So, but people are gonna want the old gameplay. So let's try a new series. Oh man, Judgment is doing great. We can just keep rolling, and then just get slammed down. So it's kind of like, it's really unfortunate, but it also feels like there was a lack of foresight. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I hope they get to continue Judgment, if only because like there are people who want specifically that traditional combat style that Yakuza had.
Yeah.
So
And I haven't gotten around to playing Judgment because I'm working through the Yakuza series piece by piece, except for the fact that I skipped from 2 to 7, but that was because I really wanted to play 7, and it was worthwhile. But what I've known about Judgment as a long time fan of the Yakuza series, is that they really like it. So many fans connected with Yagami's character, and they make fan art of him, and have been campaigning for a sequel. It's probably one of the most asked for things in the Yakuza fandom, alongside Western releases of Itchin and the other one that's not released in the West.
you're talking about the Way of the Samurai series, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Kenzin, I think, maybe. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been people have been clamoring for a Judgment sequel for a long time, because its style is very different from Yakuza, and the characters are very different. I mean, it's I hope it goes through. I'm excited for it. And I think it'll attract even more attention from people that were creating the original Yakuza combat. But yeah, that's what I've been up to. Before we get more into Yakuza tangent, what have you been up to, Samuel?
So I would talk about a game that I did play, except it's a JRPG, and this one I want to talk to Derek about more, just because I know he had some interest in it, just because I think there's multiplayer for that game as well, so he was thinking about getting it with his daughter and playing that together with him.
Nice.
But I will say this: I don't think a game has like sold me itself as well as Monster Hunter Stories 2 did in quite some time. Like basically, I downloaded the demo, I played the demo, and then as soon as I got to the end of the demo, I immediately went, I want to buy this game. So I went to the eShop and I bought it and downloaded it, and now
So
I have
demo actually worked.
Yeah, it did. Surprisingly well. Uh yeah, it's kind of interesting, like so You would think that with such a drastic change in gameplay, like turning Monster Hunter into like a turn-based game would not make it as as involved as like as like how Monster Hunter's based gameplay feels like, but surprisingly it works because basically the way it works is the combat is still turn based, um, but everything's on like a rock paper scissors system essentially. So it's somewhat like Pokemon, except like skills, special attacks, anything like that, still is still involved with that rock paper scissors system. So for example, like instead of elements having type advantage over each other, in this case it's broken down into power, speed, and technical. So power beats technical, technical beats speed, and speed beats power. And basically you're playing like a somewhat behavior combat where like depending on the monster you're fighting, you're kind of guessing, okay, like okay, like just to give a easy example, one of the first returning monsters that you fight like right away is a Puke Puke, which is the chameleon looking dragon that spews poison from its tail and its mouth. Um, so like obviously most of those are like most of its poison attacks are technical attacks. So that's pretty easy. However, when at a certain point when it gets enraged, it starts doing power attacks actually. So then you have to use speed attacks. So it's like knowing when it enters certain states, or even uh, like you can actually still target body parts too in the game. So um, which is also interesting too, because like depending on which body part you like knock off first, it changes what types of attacks that they'll go for, or rather, you limit the attacks that they have access to. So it's even more easier um, to guess what type of attacks they'll go for next, and like you can even limit down what type of poison attacks the Puki Puki can do. And yeah, like okay, so like that right there, that's like fighting the Puke Puke in Monster Hunter. Like
Huh.
you know, you have to watch for the poison attacks, but you can mitigate some of those poison attacks. Like say, um, if you don't want the Puke Puke to spray the poison cloud, you chop its tail off and you use a slashing weapon for that. So there, so like, it's a fairly simplified system, but there's a lot of bits and pieces that go into it to make the combat very complex. So so the battles aren't like entirely turn your brain off type of turn-based battles. In fact, they can be quite long, actually too. If you're fighting against an enemy that you're not familiar with, um, and they actually mitigate that by not having them as random battles, but as like encounters that you can engage with. Excuse me. Um, and then like there are towns you can go to. You can pick up side quests and stuff like that. And then there are the main missions, which pretty much play like any story mission from World or Rise. So in effect, you really are just playing a Monster Hunter game with different combat. Um,
That's cool.
so I would say if um, if you're someone who is really interested in the Monster Hunter franchise, but you're you're uncomfortable with engaging um in the action combat, you could just play Monster Hunter Stories too. It it gives you that same feel and that same thought process as well. It's actually like really good. Um,
Just in a different format. That's actually really cool.
yeah, and I haven't even talked about the things that are essentially stolen from Pokemon, but I think are executed much better here. Uh, so you also get a monster buddy, which are called monsties in the localization.
That's
Um,
cute.
yeah, it's great, and like and basically what you're doing is um, kind of keeping in with the somewhat disturbing undertone of Monster Hunter. Um, instead of uh, instead of always killing monsters, sometimes you kill monsters, or sometimes you scare them away to their monster den, in which you go to their monster den and then you find them sleeping at their nest, and then you just sneak in, take one of their eggs, and then leave, and then
Yeah.
you hatch that egg, and it becomes your monster buddy. Uh,
So kidnapping is what I'm hearing.
yeah, but it's fine because they're okay with it. Uh,
Oh, okay.
they,
That works.
funny enough, um, they get that out of the way as soon as possible before continuing on, which is almost just like, which is just like just don't think about it too much. They're okay with it. It's
Mhm.
fine. This is how it's established and everything. So it's pretty cool. I don't know too much about the story yet, aside from the fact that it's like it's somewhat similar to the story of Monster Hunter Rise, actually, but it's like but somewhat completely different. But yeah, other than that, like this is a pretty cool game, honestly. I think I feel very confident in saying that this is one of the that this will be one of the best JRPGs released this year. That's not like a remaster or reboot or anything like that. Uh, it's really good. Um, and the fact that it actually performs fairly well on the Switch too is pretty good. It it has a few frame rate hangups, especially when you're hatching the egg and stuff like that. But aside from that, it runs pretty smoothly. So yeah, that's pretty much it. There's more I can go into about it, but again, I'll leave that for another time. Other than that, uh, I've actually been playing a lot of gas games, and by gas I mean games as a service games. Surprisingly, so at at my current job, I have quite a bit of downtime, like an hour in between or so. So I'm playing like a few a few games on my phone, including Genshin Impact actually on my phone because
Oh,
I
nice.
figured I have the time now. Like in an hour, I can actually knock out the dailies easy. So I may as well do that. It's more beneficial if I want to keep playing that game. So
Mm.
yeah, I'm doing that. Um, I've been playing through. I've picked up Apex Legends again actually, and
Really?
yeah.
Is it good? I played for a while during like the first season, so
So right now, I mean honestly, I can't really say. One, because I'm not very good at shooters, and two, there's like way too many characters since I've played the game, um, and I'm still trying to get used to all of them. Sometimes I'll go through and I've gone through like 15 matches without using their skills that much, actually, which might be wrong, but I don't know. But yeah, it's funny, right? Because I didn't think myself to be that big into a battle royale game, but I think it's just because like Apex Legends, because it's relatively popular and I don't have to wait too long for a session. It's still kind of long, like maybe 40 seconds to a minute to queue up for a match in trios. Um, I don't know. It's just kind of relaxing in a way, which is weird to say for a battle royale game for me, but it's just like I can just open the game queue and just play some matches and not even really think too much about stuff. I can just sit there and shoot. Uh,
Mhm.
which like I guess I don't know. If I had more consistent players to play with in like Borderlands 3, that probably would have
Yeah.
mitigated it, but right now it's just Apex Legends. That's pretty much why. Um
Yeah,
other
sometimes you just need games like that, honestly.
Yeah, no, for sure. Um although honestly, I'm kind of kicking myself now though because I could have been playing Guilty Gear Strive instead. But I also have to get through two fairly big games. So okay, so last thing and then we'll move on. So I kind of just decided this on a whim and I'm somewhat regretting it because I'm realizing again how long it takes to get through it, but I've decided to kind of start anew with the silver case because I'm going to be writing a review for it, for rather the Nintendo Switch copy of Silver Case 2425, which is the remaster ports of the Silver Case and the sequel, the Silver Case, the 25th War. Um, and I figured, well, I told myself I'd keep playing it, but I've been putting it off. So now that I have a commitment to it, I have to force myself to play through it. It may not be the most ideal situation, but um, especially with No More Heroes 3 coming out next month, um, if I want to understand some of the possible things that might be explored in No More Heroes 3, I need to finish these games as soon as possible. So, yeah, that's it. And with that, we're gonna move on. Not a fun segue, I realize, but uh,
Hey, you do what you gotta do.
yeah,
You did your best.
yeah,
The creator of a Segway died by driving a Segway off of a cliff, so that, what I'm saying is you can't possibly do a worse Segway than that.
um, like how Nintendo announced the Switch OLED.
Hey, that's effectively equivalent to driving off of a cliff. That is a Segway. I tried.
Oh my goodness. Oh, I'm dying. Anyway, so we're gonna talk about the Switch OLED and and the Steam Deck. I almost said Stream Deck, which is unfortunate because the Elgato actually released a new Stream Deck about the same time
Huh.
as the Steam Deck was announced. Anyway, um, so the Switch OLED was announced um, to kind of
Eh.
respectfully, yeah, basically. Everyone was pretty much just like, I can't believe you've done this. Uh, all disappointment memes and so on and so forth. Even though I think everyone was kind of a little a little too trigger happy with a lot of those rumors. But
People set themselves up for failure because they were expecting the Switch Pro.
yeah.
They've been rumored on the Switch Pro for a long time.
That's why I don't trust rumors, because they end up going way out of proportion.
Mhm.
Just look at Cyberpunk.
Well, I guess in another way you could think of
True.
this as like, oh, I'm sorry. I just kind of made myself extremely sad now thinking about it because this is basically what they did with the Nintendo 3DS. They released the base model, then they introduced a light model, and now they're introducing a slight upgrade to the base model. Uh, yeah, this is that line, isn't it? This is this is just the 3DS all over again, really. Oh boy.
Yes. The 3DS, the new 3DS, the new 3DS XL. We're doing this
Yep.
again.
Yep.
I'll be happy if we get a Majora's Mask Switch OLED.
No, David, you're you're part of the problem. Anyway, uh,
Okay, well, hold on. This is why I said that.
oh, okay, fair enough. It does look nice. I will say that. But
It's beautiful.
anyway, just gonna pull up the technical specs of the Switch OLED. Um, so I do believe it is actually a little bit bigger because of the OLED screen. Um, let me see here. Okay, if I do that and oh no, that just takes me to another page. I clearly planned for this. But anyway,
Yes, of course.
yeah. Um okay. So, the Nintendo Switch and the Switch OLED model. What? Wait. Oh no. Oh no, this is going horribly wrong. Awesome. I love it. Anyway,
What happened?
no, it was just going weird. Okay. Okay, so the Switch OLED model is approximately 0.05 pounds heavier. That's the first one. I'm sure this is great content right now.
That makes all the difference.
Yes, obviously. The OLED screen is 7 inches compared to the original 6.2 inch LCD. Processor seems about the same. The OLED model has double internal storage. Um, still has still has the expandable storage slot, which is good. Wireless is the same. It has one Ethernet port, I believe, in the dock, rather. Video output is the same, 1080p by HDMI on TV, 720p in undocked. And I think that's about it, right?
That's about it. You're right.
Oh wait,
It's less than a paragraph worth of improvements.
yeah, no, not even the battery life is the same. Okay, so moving on, the Steam Deck.
It's just a shrug from me. Like,
Yeah.
no, I want to talk. I mean, people have been kind of bagging on Nintendo for a while. The long-held accusations from a lot of different people that it effectively has been riding the line of the fact that if effectively writing nostalgia and how much fans really just will support Nintendo no matter what
Mm-hmm.
to mediocre like practices in a lot of different areas. Obviously, there's been the big discussion about emulating and how they handle IPs. There's every fan has their favorite franchise, and Nintendo has just left to die. Metroid Dread was a pleasant surprise. I'm quite pleased with that. That's something that makes me a little happy. But the thing is, they can do that. They can do a nice E3 presentation, get people excited, and they forget, and then they can shove the Switch OLED in there. I don't think that they necessarily like owed anyone a Switch Pro, but man, the amount of issues people have with the Switch, they didn't even fix the Joy Cons. The OLED Joy Cons are the same model. I'm 95% certain that was confirmed.
Yeah, no,
That
it's
was
the
like the
exact same. Yeah,
one big thing that everyone had issues with the Switch. And beyond that is the hardware, which brings us to the Steam Deck. Steam Deck could be potentially showing that you can put better hardware in a handheld. Um, the hardware, the resolution, the Joy Cons. It's not even like people were just begging for an impossibly good console. A lot of these were fixes that I think were very possible, and maybe they're planning on doing later. I really don't know. It's just it's just a little disappointing. I really can't muster much more than a shrug for this model, and I am kind of curious to see how well it's going to do. That's really what's going to, because we can whine about this all day, but if people buy this like hotcakes, it's not going to change anything in terms of marketing practices because they can do this.
well, I mean, the scalpers seem to think so because pretty much all the pre-orders have been scooped, I think, too. Or oh wait, no. Sorry, I'm thinking of the Steam Deck. My apologies. So not yet. We don't know, but yeah, like I mean, it's just like it's not even worth it's not even worth considering, honestly, because you're paying 50 extra bucks for like 3/4 of an inch of a better display, which I mean, like, it's an OLED, so the display is better, but performance wise, even resolution, what like even that, like, it's not really offering anything else. It's just that, like, whatever game you're going to be playing, it's going to be on a better screen, and that's about it. Unfortunately, so um, I mean, yeah, I don't know. But in any case, we'll just go right into the Steam Deck, um, which unfortunately all the pre-orders have been stolen. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, that wasn't done out well.
Yeah, but it did show that there's plans for expanded storage models. So a 64 gigabyte one in the first quarter of 2022, 256 in the second quarter, and 512 in the third quarter. Um, and let's see. Okay, so comparatively, you're paying $50 more for the base model compared to the Switch OLED. Um, it is using an SSD storage though, actually. Oh no, wait, hang on.
Nice.
Oh no, my mistake. Okay, so the base one is actually eMMC, which I believe is flash memory. I hope I'm right. If I'm wrong, then I apologize. I don't know off the top of my head, but yeah, all these will have expandable storage as well for microSD, so that's good. Um, spec wise, okay, so wow, this gives a lot of detail which they don't even show for the Nintendo Switch, so I'm not even sure if this is worth going over, honestly. Aside from the fact that instead of an NVIDIA custom CPU, it's an AMD Zen 2.
Interesting.
Yeah, quad core.
I don't know enough about computers to know what that is.
Uh,
What makes that interest? What makes that different? I
so
mean, obviously it's a different thing,
well,
but
I mean in general, AMD is somewhat cheaper, but I mean that's really nothing new. I mean, like, even even a lot of like the lower end custom or pre-built PCs will use AMD for the CPU just because it's cheaper. Uh, this is interesting. So, um, it will actually have 16 gigabytes of DDR5 RAM, which is actually good. So, comparatively, even on the lowest settings of most high-end modern games, this would be able to run them fairly well, as long as the process or the graphics card is good enough. 7-inch LCD screen, so unfortunately you are losing out on the OLED. Hopefully that's not too bad of a loss for people who are planning to pick this up. Oh, this is interesting. It has dual mics. I'm not sure what for though. Like I'm not even sure what that would be used for, aside from voice chat. But in any case,
It's intriguing. I
Mhm.
will say I leapt at the Steam Deck. I think it's an interesting idea. I just hope we've had a point where such a thing is doable and not too gimmicky to actually work. Someone mentioned the Steam controller a while back, and you know what? They were totally right. I forgot the Steam controller existed,
Yeah.
um, or that they were even trying to do that.
Hang on.
I hope it's successful for mostly because I. Oh, do you have one there?
Yep, I bought it.
Was it is it is it good?
Um, okay, so as you can tell, it hasn't seen much use. It is still
Yes.
relatively shiny. I will say this: I kind of like the idea of the haptic feedback on the touchpad. Um, I think it definitely has its place for people who might feel like this is more natural for them, depending on how they play. It's just like it's too weird is the problem. Like it's too unique of a device to really warrant um like consumer as a consumer option. The placement is kind of weird too, I'll admit. Like even in my hands from behind, it looks like it fits fairly well, but if you can see like where my thumbs rest, over here is where the
Mhm.
analog stick is. This feels kind of awkward, and I really dislike the fact that the face buttons are all the way over here.
Yes.
Even though if you have the proper control mappings, you can affix them to positions on the trackpad on this side. But
Okay.
even then, it's just like it's very difficult to get used to. Um, I
It
immediately went
confuses me to
to
no end. Go ahead.
yeah. I immediately went to my tried and true test whenever I tried new controllers. Is fighting games. Um, and I tried, uh, I believe, Skullgirls, uh, has which has like as far as I know, is like the one I know for a fact has like the closest response time, without too much delay, and
Hmm.
it was pretty weird, honestly. Even though someone very graciously put up a really good control mapping for it, for the game, it was just kind of like, yeah, this is just kind of weird. I can't really imagine using this controller for much else. At the very least, this is probably like my go-to controller for a person I don't like at a party gets this controller. That's pretty much it.
It's the new Mad Catz controller. That's a review right there. And speaking of which, I already don't. So making like a proper handheld console poses challenges to making comfortable controllers. People complained about the Joy-Cons a decent amount, complained about like reaching and like maneuvering them when they're attached to the Switch itself. The Pro is a good controller. I like that. I don't yet know how I feel about the Steam Deck. I think similarly it's going to involve a lot of reaching with your thumbs or moving. The control sticks are really high, or I think I'm remembering how it's set up. But aren't the control sticks really high on the right and the left side? Um,
Um,
Yeah,
Something
it
like
looks a
that. Do
lot
you have a
like
picture of it?
looks a lot like the Wii U gamepad to me.
It does look like the Wii U gamepad. I
yeah.
remember the Wii U gamepad being a real. I have small hands. It's
Oh my!
funny. Someone at work, what?
I forgot. The right side also has a trackpad on it. Why are they
Oh
obsessed
wow!
with this thing?
I'm making trackpads. It's not going to happen. It's not a thing.
Oh, this is so
But
weird.
I think David's right, and I think similar to the Wii U controller, I have tiny little violin player hands, and I actually do play the violin, so they're useful for that, but not much else. Um, and when it comes to game controllers where I have to move my hands across certain buttons, the Wii U is the bane of my existence. I actually really liked that console. I did not like the controller, and this was like the same thing where I'm going to have to like destroy my tiny little thumbs by stretching them across different areas to push buttons. Um,
Yeah, because like
I don't know.
it really depends on like I'm looking at these images that Valve put up of people holding the thing. Um, I don't know if it even rests very well. Just going off of these images is the problem. Because um, really, my whole problem with the original Joy Cons is that they feel too light. Like I feel like if I grip them too hard, they could break just under me holding them too much. Um, and also just uh, while it doesn't feel nearly as bad, after quite a while, it does kind of feel tiresome holding the Switch. At like with the Joy-Con controllers, like it got so bad to the point where I have my Switch right here. This is gonna be an entire controller showcase. Um, I bought I bought these big things. Um, this
Wow,
is the
something.
this is the Hori Hori Pad Joy-Con attachments that was released uh, for for when Daemon X Machina came out. Because in that game you have to do a lot of 3D movement and shooting at the same time. Uh, it's a mecha game with flight. Actually, pretty good. I meant to pick it up, but I never got a chance around it. But like, but I mean, like just like this little, just like this little extra room and the grips on the side make this feel a lot more comfortable to hold. Even though like it extends the Switch itself by like two Joy Cons worth of space. I would rather have this and deal with it not being nearly as portable than with the Joy Cons. Um, so yeah, I mean like I think it's interesting to at least explore the venture. I remember watching a video by Low Spec Gamer quite a while ago, who did a few reviews on what they're calling it portable gaming PCs. Um, and it's just like, uh, oh man, I don't think this is what he said, but I think what's really the problem, like above all else, aside from the performance, aside from like the price, like those aren't really the issue. The big issue is uh, what what's going to be offered, um, what like what games are going to be offered for it, like is the thing. And
Right.
like obviously, it's Valve's own device, so Steam is the most obvious choice. Um, that being said, it doesn't. There's nothing really on Steam that nearly has the pull that Nintendo's own IP has. Derek in our podcast chat even uh, reflected the same sentiment when we were talking about it earlier. And yeah, like that's really the problem is that like aside from Nintendo's many faults, the fact of the matter is that they are where they are because of well established core well established franchises and
Mhm.
fundamentally solid core gameplay with all those franchises for the most part. We have lost a few. Some are coming back, but we're waiting patiently. Um, but it's but that's really the big thing is like it doesn't really matter like how much it is. I know there are a lot of articles talking about the price point. That's not important in a world where like uh I Apple iPhone and the Samsung Galaxy line are competing with each other. It's practically a non-issue, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think what is the biggest issue is just like what is Valve going to do to combat um, the Nintendo IPs because they don't have nearly the exact same uh, like franchise force um, unless it's something like on the scale of like a new Half-Life game.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like that's really the big thing. So I think I think what it really is going to come down to is like how's it going to service like the potentially like extremely huge libraries that a lot of people have on Steam, like there's only so much space available. And when you're talking about like a lot of the higher end games, even like even comparing something like Breath of the Wild to Skyrim, even on its most base level without any of the DLC, uh, I think is equal to or a little bit more in storage space compared to Breath of the Wild. Um, so I feel like for portable gaming PCs to really excel, uh, this is just my thought. I don't know for sure if they'll actually do this, but I think the future involves cloud gaming with these devices. Like that's really going to be the thing
If we can get
because
we can get widespread like internet access is the issue because
mhm,
the only major issue see with cloud gaming is the fact that downloads and disc versions of games still remain super prominent in areas that don't and might never have fast enough internet speeds to make cloud gaming happen. I think it's an interesting idea, but it's I still see that as a limitation in my mind.
yeah, it still is a limitation. One way to mitigate this is if I know for sure it's not on there, but if the Steam Deck also had access um, to 4G and 5G towers, stuff like that. So then it's like, but like ignoring the obvious problem there, which is requiring a data plan, really. Um,
Yes.
that would mitigate some of that issue, but that's like a whole other spectrum, and that's like another thing you'd have to add on to the device itself. But it is it is something to think about because like we're starting to get to the point where even home consoles are still not giving um, consumers the storage that they think they need. Um,
Mhm.
that's how I'm gonna say it, even though I know for a fact that like yeah, a lot of these games require way too much space. Um, without getting to the inherent issues of modern gaming designs. I think I think cloud gaming is the right way to mitigate this issue, but only if that wireless communication is solved, which it won't be, but it could be within the next generation. Um, and I think that's what the
Is you
problem
thinking
is.
this could possibly be, yeah, it's thinking it could possibly be something that could take root later as they keep developing.
Yeah, so I think what it really is now is just that um, I don't think this I don't think the deck is gonna do that good. Go ahead and
Mhm.
timestamp this for when I'm wrong in the future. But um, I think what's more important is that if Valve shows that they do care and continue like updating the firmware and stuff like that, little things that they can do to at least make whatever the experience with the Steam Deck is better than what is currently available on the Nintendo Switch. Like say the Steam Deck dropped today, and
Mhm.
um if it had like integrated functions of the Steam app itself in the device, then that's already much better than what Nintendo offers with the Switch right now. In terms of
Right.
communication with the online market and even with multiplayer as well. Um, but yeah, like I don't know how far they can really go with that, especially with things like performance updates and stuff like that too. Um, because arguably, you wouldn't want by design you wouldn't want to forcefully make the games run at lower performance without the consent of the user. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, I'm not sure. There's like a lot of questions to really consider. If you're just thinking about the technical aspect of the software and the hardware, or sorry, not the hardware, of the software itself for this thing. Um, and that's what really interests me most about the Steam Deck. It's not even really about like, am I gonna buy or not? It's just like I want to know if Valve actually has plans or not. This is something I mentioned with Anna um, on the podcast episode that we did together, um, and like she basically said the same thing where it's like the Steam Deck just can't uh, compete in terms of games and what's recognized, and at least in that regard. Um, and even if they did show support, it may still fail. Uh, but I think like you know, as long as Valve actually puts in a fraction of the effort that we know that they're capable of when it comes to their games, it should be then it should survive and may pick up um, like in the next gaming generation. Not this one right now, because we're already like uh, coming out of it now with the PS5 and uh, the Series X, right?
It's for Series X, yeah.
Okay, but yeah,
Yeah, I think you're totally right on. Now that I'm rethinking it, I think there are definitely some key things to consider. For one thing, it was interesting. The timing was excellent because obviously this stands immediately in contrast to the Switch OLED, and that was an intentional marketing choice of some sort.
Yeah.
Basically to go, hey, look, we made a beefier console. You can actually run all these games, and we have a library, and there is something to be said for the wider selection of games that they can theoretically run and other options. But my biggest question is, who are they marketing this to? And like, I don't know. Just I know IP is a big thing, and it's why Nintendo has consistently such a big leg up in this category. But I really do think that is the killer here because they have to if they're not going to rely on IP because Nintendo the Switch there are games you cannot play anywhere else on that. I don't have a Switch, and the reasons I would buy one were not immediately to go, oh, I like these features. I like the portability necessarily. I like the control setup because I'm not super passionate about any of those things. It's to go, oh, I want to play Animal Crossing and other games, I'm sure, but Animal Crossing mostly.
Mm-hmm.
The Steam Deck, I don't see it getting anything like that. So it really has to have some kind of leg up on its features. Like you were saying, it's limited by. It's an interesting concept, the idea of a portable Steam library. But I do wonder if it's a little too gimmicky to stand on its own, especially when you're like trying to factor into storage space and what games actually are available on there, and like the limited amount of IP that you could pull off on that. And at the end of the day, I have to wonder the kind of people that would buy a Steam Deck are most likely to be the kind of people that already have good quality PCs and aren't going to be going outside a whole lot. I don't know. I've seen a handful of weird gimmicky consoles fail over the last couple of years. Valve, they're a big company. They do a lot of big things. I hope to be proven wrong, and I think the biggest reason I want to be proven wrong is just because I want to see some good competition for Nintendo. Because if there's a serious extra contender, and I don't think this is going to be it necessarily, it moves both of them towards shaping their act up one way or another. But I'm not super faithful in the idea that that will actually happen.
Mm-hmm. Just real quick, I forgot about this. So, it says here that the Steam Deck is actually intended to be an open platform, meaning that you actually can install Windows on it. But it also means that you can install other game fronts as well. So, like, I mean, like, not that I really use, not that I personally use any other game fronts as much anymore. But you can install stuff like the Epic Game Store or Xbox Game Pass on it as well, which
That is interesting.
yeah. So yeah, like it is still for all intents and purposes a PC, just with a different interface. Like it says here, according to IGN, you can even wipe the Steam OS that it comes installed with, and just use Windows instead to run the Steam Deck. So yeah, like let me see here. One of the Valve designers. Wait, hang on. I just want to make sure this is right. There's a quote here that also says you might even be able to get VR working with the Steam Deck.
Wow.
Though that is not what the designers are currently optimizing the performance for. So it's a possibility. It's just not what they're focusing on with this one, it seems. So I guess the idea would be uh, later on. Later on, it would be possible with like a new Steam Deck, I suppose, which is also interesting. So yeah, like I mean, obviously, like uh, these are these are also things to consider as well. I mean, the only issue really being like, uh, how far would you want to stretch that versatility? I guess. Because I mean, like, you know, uh, since it has a USB-C dock, um, you could just use a USB-C docking station and connect by USB a mouse and a keyboard, and essentially have like a really jumbled together PC that you can pull out at any time. Uh, but again, like I feel like that's not really the purpose of making the Steam Deck. I mean, like obviously it's in direct competition with the Switch itself. Um,
Right. But it has
Valve.
to find a way to establish itself as its own thing, like a reason for existing, separate from the Switch. Because in my mind, it has a hard time like competing directly with the Switch. It's not doing anything close to the same thing. You know what I'm saying? It's going for different markets in my mind. So I think it's going to have to sell itself on accessibility features or like I guess the openness of the platform in contrast to how closed off the Switch can be in some ways.
Mhm.
Because I think that's going to be the selling point for it.
Yeah, and I mean, like, not to be that guy, but since I do follow emulation projects still, like obviously, if it can run Windows, then there would be a way to get emulation software on this as well. I'm not sure how that's going to work in terms of selling the product because if it's designated as a PC when it's sold, then I think that's fine. If it's being designated as a console, that could potentially be problematic. But I mean, I don't really know. I don't. I'm not even sure if it's actually that problematic. I'm just wondering like how exactly that's gonna work. But even then, like um, like like if this was to come out, um, you could potentially play a higher res and frame unlocked Breath of the Wild through emulation through a Wii U emulator on it, and
Yeah,
pretty much be you would pretty much be playing it with the exact same experience as like a Switch, for the most part, aside from the fact that it's basically
controls differently.
basically black to gray area in terms of how you're playing it.
Mhm.
But
And that's what I'm saying in terms of the openness versus the closed. It's interesting because it could. I would like to imagine a world in which this, say, the emulation side of it gets successful enough that Nintendo wises up to the fact that brutally cracking down on, on any kind of emulation without having a real plan for how to distribute older games is a bad idea. I mean, we'll see because the emulation market is also wide open. It's an interesting idea. For me personally, I look at it and went, oh, that's pretty cool. Maybe I'll get one. And that's probably leave me like my last thought on it for a while. But we'll see.
yeah, for sure. Okay. Uh, and I think that's a good point to just jump right into the next topic. So while I was trying to look for news, and somehow forgetting the fact that the Switch OLED and the Steam Deck were announced, I guess I'm a fake gamer. Oh no! But IGN actually released this article, um, talking with uh, game director Mike Daly from Insomniac, who was in charge of Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, the latest Ratchet and Clank game that released on PS5. Um, the it's a fairly small article, but what made me what made me really interested about this article was just like were just some of these quotes that were given. Like immediately it starts out with Insomniac Games shed the quote conventional wisdom unquote that games need to be difficult in designing Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. So that's already like an interesting statement because conventional wisdom I think is like a more fair, uh, uh, or rather a more positive way to put it. Um, but I think obviously like the the target is like conventional game design, um, and
Right.
which I guess
Tradition, if you
like
will.
yeah, which I guess in terms uh of the Ratchet and Clank series in particular, uh, I think it does. I think it does kind of make sense in that regard, just because like well, actually, let me ask real quick. David, Malachi, have you guys ever played any of the Ratchet and Clank games at all? PS2 to PS3?
Bits and pieces, but not whole games. No, I need to.
I played the very beginning of Tools of Destruction on the PS3 and never touched it in the past 14 years.
Okay. Um. So, I'm actually basically the opposite. Then I actually played Ratchet and Clank on the PS2 all the way up to Deadlocked, and I played only a little bit of Tools of Destruction when I think it was a demo, and then regrettably played way too long of Ratchet and Clank All for One. Um, May that name never be spoken of again. But anyway, so so for me personally, I always found it odd how Ratchet and Clank developed in tone, going from the old series to Tools of Destruction to basically like the reset of the characters themselves, with I guess with I guess even Tools of Destruction really, just because like with Ratchet and Clank 1 and 2 specifically, they like even though it was like cartoon animals and robots and stuff like that, like the tone was actually kind of dry. Like it uh like I guess if some people went back to look at it, uh they would call it somewhat bare. I would call it efficient. Um that's just me personally
Right.
though. But then like from uh Ratchet and Clank 3, a bit of Deadlocked as well, which came after, and transitioning into Tools of Destruction, it definitely moves into more of a more like less subtle tone. It goes for more orchestral music. The beats are very uh, the beats are very standardized. I guess the best way to describe it, like in Tools of Destruction, Ratchet turns out to be part of a long lost race of basically galaxy saviors, which is already weird to think of. And also, apparently, he's the last of his kind, which uh, is also interesting considering there was another of his kind in the second game. But um, yeah, I don't know. Like when Tools of Destruction first came out, like I remember playing it and being like, yeah, this more or less plays of what I remember. But then I didn't really want to keep doing that, even though I had pretty much played every other game up to that point. And it never really hit me why until until watching a video, and uh, in that video it was pointed out that the tone had actually changed. Um,
Hmm.
and like this isn't exactly um, about game design in particular, but I think it's just like it kind of shows the fact that Insomniac Games themselves have clearly decided to go with a different focus, not just in game design, but also in terms of experience. You know,
Yeah.
like Ratchet and Clank is really like the only other series that they had aside from Resistance, which launched with the PS3, and that really didn't last very long, unfortunately. And actually, let me check real quick. Uh, but yeah, other than that, I mean, very clearly, going off of the success with Marvel's Spider-Man um, and Miles Morales, they're uh, it's obvious what format works better for them in terms of success. So I'm kind of just wondering, like, well, before I get into it, I'm gonna go further down this article to actually uh, pinpoint the to get to the point of the discussion, which Daly says here. We have to we have to shed this conventional wisdom that games kind of need to be um, I'm not going to say that word, need to be difficult for you to get satisfaction out of it. We no longer think like what will make the most elite players feel good about themselves, and more what will enable everyone to have the experience they want to have, because that's sort of the most important thing to us. Um, and then it goes on talking about like the accessibility added to their games, such as the ping and hint system, the collectibles that they added, which are called activity cards. I think that, from what I understand, that basically replaced the skill point system, which was basically their version of achievements nowadays, and also the ability to skip puzzles. Um, and yeah, like even they even say here that like making puzzle levels unskippable would have been unthinkable 3 to 5 years ago. Obviously, like even Resident Evil 8 still has puzzles. They're it's a bit generous to call them puzzles, but they are puzzles nonetheless.
Right.
Like you can't skip them, obviously. So yeah, I do find it interesting that it's like that. Obviously, Insomniac Games is clearly more interested in about serving an enjoyable experience to everyone who picks up the game. Like I think that's basically um, what their goal is now with every new game, which I think that's perfectly fine. Um,
Yeah.
But yeah, I just wanted to ask you guys what you thought about that. Like saying like, do you think it's right? Do you think it's right of them to do away with a lot of um, like how do I want to word this? Like, do you think it's right for conventions in game mechanics to be uh, completely changed or done away with in terms of servicing um a more enjoyable experience?
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, totally. I think you might touch on this a little bit earlier, but one of the things that intrigued me about this is just the idea that I think I actually mentioned it in the article as well, how much the gaming landscape has changed. Like our default term for a difficult game is now the Nintendo hard term because of the fact that, games or home console games grew out of the arcade style, very challenging games effectively designed to take all of your money from you.
Mm-hmm.
And then, somewhat partially because of that, became extraordinarily difficult. Very little in the way of save points. No leniency in terms of hitboxes. Sending you all the way back to the stage at the beginning of the game. Nothing. Even like more subtle game design elements that have come into play nowadays didn't exist whatsoever. Like I would say more in the way of like say indicators, for example. You have your classic side-scrolling shoot 'em up or platformer from the olden days and the NES, SNES type days. There's no kind of indicator if something coming from going to come from the bottom of the screen, top of the screen, side of the screen. It is purely a test of your reflex skills as to whether or not you can dodge that, and that was considered moderately fair, I guess back then. But we organically shifted that partially to appeal to a wider market. I don't think it was intentionally as a an attempt to incorporate things more casually or to make things easier for people with disabilities. But the landscape has changed. I think it's worth like what a lot of people forget about when they complain about stuff like this
Mm-hmm.
is how far we really have come in a lot of ways. And I think some people get antsy about this kind of stuff partially because they see a merging of a casual and competitive market and fear losing, I guess, the competitive edge. And I guess it's different than the competitive edge of multiplayer, but more like the single player of like, oh, did you like really beat that game, or were you one of the losers that skipped all this stuff? Kind of the same, I guess, argument we get with puzzle games. It's like, oh, did you beat that game, or did you use a walkthrough to figure that out?
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's that same aspect of not wanting to lose this, I guess, very valuable piece of gaming culture and little like competitiveness um, that even goes as far as like whole subcultures built up like speedrunning that wouldn't have existed if all games were made intentionally easy or casual. But what I think is more important is the fact that that's not what's happening here. In my mind, this is very similar or almost the same as a multitude of games that have come out fairly recently that have difficulty levels that focus on allowing you to see the story recently. I can't remember what I played recently that had a setting that was like that, but I really appreciated it because it allowed it. I didn't use it personally, but I could see why someone would enjoy that. Um, and that was all it was for me. It was I looked at the difficulty screen. I went, "Oh, I'm here to play a moderately challenging game and enjoy the story." But it's good that
Oh. Uh-oh. Ah,
and
hold up. Uh, are you back?
yes.
Okay.
When did I cut out? When did I cut out?
Um, basically
Right,
just
right,
yeah, basically just before you were about to make your point.
yeah, right after you mentioned moderately difficult game.
Yeah.
Okay. Something about yeah. I was saying something along the lines of I wanted to, I would see a moderately difficult game. I wanted to play it like that. Would see that there's an option for someone to look at just the story and would leave it at that, basically saying, "I want to experience it this way, but it's cool that someone else wants to experience it in a different way." And I think that's what Ratchet and Clank does, right? Isn't it just that it includes an invincibility setting? You can skip puzzles.
I know right off the bat you can just skip puzzles. I think depending on how many activity cards you pick up, it unlocks certain modes. Um, where it's like invincible ammo, then invincible health, if I remember
Uh,
correctly. That's what I've heard. I haven't like looked into it all too much myself. PS5s being as PS5s being as rare as they are, notwithstanding. Um,
but yeah. So I've heard this argument happening a handful of times in different spaces. I'm a pretty big advocate for better thinking about how we can make games more accessible on the disability side. But I also think options and considering even beyond disabilities, like opening games up to more people, is good. And I think it depends on the market. Like the whole discussion of whether or not Dark Souls would be ruined if you added an easy option is perhaps a valid one because you run the risk of defeating the very nature of the game. But for a lot of games that are adjustable in how you learn and how you process the game, in what the core draw of the game is, I think there's a lot to be said for exploring new options in terms of how you experience it. Um, Ratchet and Clank is a great example. That's a family-friendly platformer that's loved by people of all different ages. Um, and I'm sure by plenty of people that have been around for long enough that they've accrued various different, like a scenario I imagine being very possible. Someone was a kid, teenager, young adult, whatever, when Ratchet and Clank first came out, played through all the games, and for one reason or another is not as 100% quick on the reflexes, not mentally there, maybe has some kind of physical disability at some point, and wants to play a newer game. I want that option to be there for them, or even just as simple as I don't have enough time to play the new Ratchet and Clank on this difficulty level because I have kids and lots of responsibilities. And I think that's the kind of perfect game to test stuff out like this. I hope this continues to spark a productive conversation about how we look at games because um, I think Ratchet and Clank is the right kind of game to do this on personally.
yeah. Uh, David, before I go, did you have anything to add?
Um, I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of in the same mindset. I'm perfectly fine with them making some things easier to play in the interest of appealing to more people because I stay away from Dark Souls because I hate how hard they are. And given that it's Insomniac talking about it, um, Spider Man was probably one of the best games I played in 2018 because of the story. So, I mean, you can make a fantastic story and have it be just as satisfying as beating a hard game. So, I don't think difficulty is really the only thing that we need to have to make a game satisfying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely fair. I mean, uh, I'm always thinking about, um, like how like how different games, or rather like how different games have become, with like accessibility options and stuff like that. But not even going to like specifics. I think even on a base level, I do think uh, I do think it's good for there to at least be more options. But then it gets kind of difficult when you're talking about certain games. So for example, like David, you brought up Dark Souls as an example, um, and it's kind of like, how do you for like a video game specifically, or I guess like yeah, like for a video game specifically, um, how do you craft a unique experience like Dark Souls for everybody? Not to say that like every experience should be enjoyable by everyone, but it's more the it's more the challenge of how do you make a specific experience like Dark Souls um, or like uh, like chess. Uh, like how do you make those types of games require require like your attention and like a little more forethought than uh, what's I'm going to carefully say expected for games like that. Um, like yeah, I don't know, cause like even for me, I could never get into the Dark Souls series specifically, but games like Bloodborne and Code Vein were much more uh, easier for me to get hooked on to, just because of differences in design. And it wasn't, I don't even think it was even necessarily for accessibility. Like in Bloodborne's case, it was more of just like them just trying something different and just seeing how well it worked. Um, so yeah, I'm not sure. Like again, I want to stress that I'm not trying to make a case um, that every game can be enjoyed. Uh, but it's just like what like it's very difficult to talk about specifically difficulty when you're trying to, especially when you're trying to focus on like um when you're talking about like the experience of a video game, like a very specific video game, like stuff like games like Dark Souls, or well, just to use a different example, say like Final Fantasy, right? Like Final Fantasy 7 remake, I would say, is a very different type of experience compared to previous Final Fantasy games, going as far as like uh, even the original Final Fantasy 7. Like like arguably Final Fantasy 7 remake is more of a continuation of the original Final Fantasy 7, but even Final Fantasy 7 offers a different experience. I would say it's more traditional compared to the games up to 6, but even 7 was very different compared to the previous games before that as well. Uh, and I guess like um, and I guess it's just like it's probably the biggest challenge is like how do you balance that the enjoyment of that experience between um, people who are not used to the franchise and people who are used to the franchise, and how do you draw those together? Because I always think I think there's always a disconnect when you're trying to consider both, and it's really hard to hit that healthy medium between those two audiences.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I think is where the gatekeeping comes in. The idea of like, oh, you didn't get the real insert game series experience because they stopped doing that in this game. Or, you haven't earned your way into, beating this game. Uh, I don't know. I think it's tough to do, but what's most important to me, and I think that would solve a lot of these issues, is considering what direction you want to go from the very beginning. Because I feel like a lot of difficulty measures, particularly in like say shooters, are or even lots of other games, are very much added in after the game is finished, or like not after it's finished, but like fairly far in development, that's effectively just, oh, we need different difficulties. Okay, well, I guess scale up some enemies over there. Your health is now lower. That's it. And it doesn't do anything to affect the experience of the game. It doesn't make it particularly more challenging, even. It makes it less fair
Yeah,
and less fun in many cases because it doesn't challenge you to use what you know about the game, your knowledge of the series, to defeat it. It turns into a grind a lot of the time.
yeah,
Um, in contrast, the easier version of the game runs the risk of going the complete opposite direction, of where it's not fun whatsoever because it's boring. Um, so I think this is a very vague statement, but a lot of solving this kind of issue is going to require game developers to take bold risks in determining what is the most important thing about their game, what they really want players to get out of it. Um, and in that process, I think addressing a lot of the issues with difficulty is going to start with giving more accessibility options, because that will continue opening up audiences, because at the very least you don't even need to have people that are like, I want the game to be easier because I have a literal disability. You wouldn't necessarily need that if you had options that were more toggleable
hmm,
and other people didn't even need to think about too much. um, I don't know. I think it's a lot of sweeping reform that can take place here, and I hope this leads the beginning of the conversation as we head into new generations of games, because I think this kind of approach to game design can work on most kinds of games. It's just going to take an implementation that is intentional in what it's trying to do, I guess. Um, I don't know. This is what my thoughts on that.
yeah, for sure. And it's interesting actually because I was just because like earlier when I was talking about my week, um, I did talk about a game that did change up the formula, Monster Hunter Stories 2, which turns Monster Hunter into a turn-based RPG. And I just said like, yeah, I think this is actually a way for people to enjoy what Monster Hunter feels like without engaging with the gore, uh, with the gore, with the Al Gore, no, with the core gameplay of the original Monster Hunter series. Um,
Right.
so I think it's like, I think it's less about tagging a difficulty mode and more of just like, well, like let's look like rather than like trying to adjust for um right trying to adjust the game for everyone. let's look let's take a step back and look at what the game actually is and see how to achieve that. Like it's really about the like it is really about the experience. So uh and I think it's just like it's hard to imagine because um again, like I said, not many games accomplish this. Like um another example would be the Resident Evil series. Um if you want to talk about a game that has like a very split audience. I don't think any franchise encapsulates that more than the Resident Evil series, because there's clearly two different schools of thought between people who liked uh, the original games with the tank controls, and then people who enjoyed the Resident Evil 4 experience. Um,
Right.
and when I say Resident Evil 4 experience, I am including, um, excuse me, I am including um, 5, 5, 7, and 8 in that as well. Um, and as well as 6, even though almost everyone didn't enjoy that game. But yeah, like, it's very clear that like after 4, the Resident Evil team definitely swung into a completely different path after the success of that game. Like that, like whatever the experience was for Resident Evil 4, that's what sold. That's what sold that game the most, and they've basically been uh, like chasing for that same success again. Uh,
Right.
so so yeah, like it's difficult to talk about, or rather, sorry, let me back up real quick. Um, Especially when you're talking about um, the game experience, like that's what people think about the game, and because you know, uh, because because it always feels binary when you're talking about the game experience. It's almost like mechanics have a one to one where it's like if you take this out, then it's no longer that same experience anymore. So then like how do you
Mm-hmm.
so so I think obviously I think it's less about the mechanics, and um it's more about like how do you achieve the same effect that those mechanics gave, and that's what you have to focus on. Uh, I I
Yeah.
I wish I knew more about game development, that where I could discuss this question even further. Unfortunately, I'm not, so it's difficult to really say.
Found a really good series of videos. I might post this in the chat if I can remember to find them.
Mhm.
Because the issue does fascinate me. It has fascinated me for a long time. Um, Ever since I discovered the world of emulation and was playing through old school Nintendo games that way, and got into long heated discussions with people over whether or not using save points. I mean, save points in an emulator still counted as beating the game. And there's a very heavy divide there. And there's that chase for the original experience, and the question of whether or not piling on so much to chase that original experience and keeping that so much runs the risk of alienating people that would otherwise be huge fans of the series if they could just experience it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have the perfect answer. Nor do I know enough about game design to have all that much truly insightful to say. So. But yeah, I might post those videos at some point because they're an interesting watch.
Mm. Okay. Yeah. I'll try to. I suppose. I suppose if there's any interest, I'll put up the link of that video series I watched about the Ratchet and Clank series as well. Um,
Mhm.
if anyone has an interest in that, and I'll put up your links too, since you talked about it, Malachi. But yeah, I think that's gonna do it for us today. Yeah, wow, wow, we've only been recording for that long. I felt like that discussion went on way longer, but anyway, yeah, that's gonna be it from
Time
us.
goes slow when you're having fun. No, that's not how that goes. It's okay.
It's okay. Uh, Anyway, that's gonna be it from us at Press Turn. Um, Thank you guys for watching. And if you enjoy this, I'm sorry, I'm going to be doing this every time. If you want me to stop, at least get me to 1,000 subscribers so I can change the custom URL, and then maybe I'll lay off you for a while. But that's going to be it from us at Press Turn, and we'll catch you at the next one. Bye.
Bye.
So, yeah.
I guess I should wave too, but now I have to hit stop record.